that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. In all that time, no species had ever defeated them. No army had ever made them retreat. No enemy had ever made them afraid. They were perfect predators. Each stood 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through metal. Their bodies were covered in natural armor, thick plates of chitin that could stop bullets and blades. Their eyes could see in total darkness. Their hearing could detect a heartbeat from 50 meters away. When they found a new species, they gave them a simple choice: surrender and serve, or fight and die. Most species chose to surrender. The ones who chose to fight became nothing more than memories and bones. Commander was one of the greatest hunters in the Empire. He commanded the 7th Hunting Fleet, a force of 200 warships that had conquered dozens of worlds. His claws had killed thousands. His name was spoken with fear across 100 star systems. On this day sat in his command chair aboard the flagship Dark Claw. He was bored. It had been many cycles since his last real hunt. The galaxy had become too quiet, too peaceful, too easy. Then his communication officer turned to him with news that made his 4 eyes narrow with interest. "Commander, our scouts have detected a new species. They have just developed faster-than-light travel. They are exploring the outer regions of the galaxy." Leaned forward, "Tell me about them." "They call themselves humans. They come from a small planet called Earth." The officer pulled up images on the main screen. "As you can see, they are soft-bodied. No natural armor, no claws, only 2 arms, 2 eyes. They appear to be very weak." Studied the images. The humans looked pathetic, small, fragile. They would break easily. "What about there?" he asked. "It is classified as a death world, Commander. Extreme temperature changes, high gravity, filled with predators and diseases. We do not understand how such a weak species survived there." This made curious. A weak species from a dangerous world. Perhaps there was more to these humans than their appearance suggested. Perhaps they would provide some entertainment before they died. "Send a scout ship to observe them," ordered. "I want to know everything about these creatures before we hunt them." Far across the galaxy, Captain stood on the bridge of the Horizon, humanity's first deep space exploration vessel. He was a tall man with calm eyes and steady hands. He had spent 20 years in the military before being chosen to lead this historic mission. Nothing in his training had prepared him for what they were about to discover. The Horizon had been traveling for 3 months, exploring star systems that no human had ever seen before. The crew was excited and nervous. They were writing history with every jump through space. Lieutenant Park, the tactical officer, worked at her station near the captain's chair. She was a former Special Forces soldier, small but fierce. Her eyes never stopped moving, always watching, always ready. Doctor, the science officer, studied his screens with intense focus. He was the person on the ship, always asking questions, always seeking answers. His job was to understand anything alien they might encounter. Engineer monitored the ship's systems from her console. She knew every wire, every circuit, every bolt of the Horizon. If something broke, she could fix it. If something didn't exist, she could build it. Sergeant Lee stood silently near the door, watching everything and saying nothing. He led the security team. Nobody knew much about his past, but everyone knew his reputation. He was the most dangerous person on the ship, and he worked very hard to make sure nobody ever had to find out why. "Captain," Doctor said suddenly, his voice tight with surprise, "I'm detecting a ship. It's not one of ours." The bridge went silent. Everyone stopped breathing. "Are you sure?" asked. "Yes, sir. The design is completely alien. It's approaching us at high speed." Felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. This was the moment humanity had wondered about for centuries. They were not alone in the universe. "Open communications," he ordered. The screen flickered, and then the humans got their first look at it. The creature was massive. its armor gleaming in the dim light of its ship. Its forearms were folded across its chest. Its eyes stared at them with a look that recognized immediately. It was the look of a predator studying its prey. The spoke, its voice deep and harsh. The ship's computer translated the words into English. "Weak creatures, I am Scout Commander of the Empire. You have entered our territory. You have two choices. Surrender and serve us or be hunted and killed. You have 1 hour to decide." The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent. Hands moved to her weapon's console. Fingers touched the gun at his side. Doctor's face was pale with fear. "Captain," said quietly, "we can't fight that ship. Our weapons won't even scratch their hull." "I know," replied. "We can't outrun them either," added. "Their engines are faster than ours." "I know," said again. Spoke for the first time. "So what do we do?" Stared at the screen where the ship waited. He thought about Earth. He thought about his family. He thought about the billions of humans who had no idea that monsters existed among the stars. He could not surrender. To surrender would mean slavery for all of humanity. He could not fight. To fight would mean death for his crew and no warning for Earth. There was only one option left. "We run," said. Looked surprised, "Sir." "We run and we make them chase us. We learn everything we can about them while they hunt us. Then we find a way home and warn Earth." He turned to face his crew. "We might not survive this, but if we can get information back to Earth, humanity will have a chance. That's worth dying for." The crew nodded. They understood. They were all scared, but they were also determined. Ordered, "Give me everything the engines have. Plot a course into that asteroid field we passed earlier. If we're going to run, we're going to make them work for every kilometer." The horizon turned and fled into the darkness of space. Behind them, the scout ship began its pursuit. On the Dark Claw, Commander received the report that the humans had chosen to run. He laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "Interesting," he said. "Most species fight or surrender. These humans run like prey." He bared his teeth in a terrible smile. "Good, I was hopping for a hunt." He did not know that this hunt would change everything. He did not know that these soft, weak creatures were about to teach the something they had never learned in 10,000 years of conquest. He did not know that humans were the most dangerous kind of prey in the universe. The kind that bites back. The scout ship chased the horizon across 3 star systems. Scout Commander sat in his chair and watched the human vessel with growing amusement. The small ship ducked behind planets, hid in asteroid fields, and used every trick to stay ahead. It was entertaining to watch prey struggle so hard. Had hunted many species, but none had ever run this long or this well. Most prey gave up after a few hours. These humans had been running for 5 days. "They are clever for such weak creatures," admitted to his crew. "But cleverness cannot save them forever. Eventually they will make a mistake, and when they do, we will be there." Back on the Dark Claw, Commander monitored the chase with interest. He had never seen prey behave this way before. The humans didn't panic. They didn't beg. They just kept running, always staying 1 step ahead of the scout ship. "Why don't they surrender?" one of his officers asked. Did not have an answer. In 10,000 years, no species had ever run for this long. They either fought until they died or they surrendered to save themselves. The humans did neither. It bothered him in a way he could not explain. On the horizon, the situation was desperate. The crew had not slept properly in days. The ship was running low on fuel. Every time they thought they had escaped, the ship appeared again, always finding them, always hunting. Captain stood on the bridge studying the star charts with tired eyes. His body was exhausted, but his mind was still sharp. He knew they could not run forever. They needed a new plan. Doctor approached him with a tablet in his hands. "Captain, I've been analyzing the communications we've intercepted. I found something important." Turned to face him. "What is it?" They have conquered hundreds of species over thousands of years, but every single one of them either surrendered immediately or fought directly. No species has ever done what we're doing. No species has ever run. Eyes were bright with understanding. They don't know how to handle this, Captain. They're predators, pure apex predators. They've never had to think like prey before. Leaned forward from her station. What does that mean for us? It means they have a weakness, explained. They don't understand fear. They don't understand caution. They've never had to look over their shoulders or worry about being hunted. Their entire evolution, their entire culture is built around being the strongest. They don't know what it's like to be anything else. Felt something stir in his chest. It was a small flame of hope. So what do you suggest? Smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a scientist who had just figured out how to solve a very dangerous puzzle. We stop running, we turn around, and we become the hunters. The bridge went quiet. Everyone looked at like he had lost his mind. Hunt them, said. With what? We have one ship, they have weapons that could destroy us in seconds. We don't fight them with weapons, replied. We fight them with fear. We use the one thing they've never experienced before. We make them feel what it's like to be prey. His eyes narrowed as she began to understand. You want to scare them. Yes, they are psychologically unprepared for this. If we can get inside their heads, make them doubt themselves, make them afraid, they won't know how to respond. Their instincts won't help them because their instincts only know how to attack, not defend. Thought about this for a long moment. It was a crazy plan. It was also the only plan that made any sense. He turned to, Lieutenant, there's a nebula 3 light-years from here. What do you know about it? Checked her charts. It's called the Veil, dense gas clouds, heavy radiation, sensors don't work well inside it. Ships have gotten lost in there for weeks. Perfect, said. That's where we make our stand, set a course. The horizon changed direction and flew toward the Veil. Behind them, the scout ship followed eagerly. Scout Commander was pleased when the humans entered the nebula. They think they can hide in there, he said with contempt. Foolish. We will find them no matter where they go. His ship entered the nebula, pushing through the thick clouds of gas. Almost immediately, his sensors became unreliable. Shadows appeared and disappeared on the screens. Sounds echoed through the communication systems that seemed to come from nowhere. Find them, ordered. Hours passed, then a full day. The ship moved slowly through the nebula, searching for any sign of the human vessel, but the horizon was gone. It had vanished like smoke in the wind. Began to feel something strange in his stomach. It was not hunger. It was not anger. He did not recognize the feeling, so he ignored it. On the second day, things started to go wrong. First, there was a noise in the lower decks, a banging sound, metal on metal. When sent warriors to investigate, they found nothing. But the sound continued, moving through the ship like a ghost. Then the lights began to flicker. One corridor would go dark, then another. The engineers could not find the cause. On the third day, one of his warriors disappeared. He had been patrolling the cargo hold. When he didn't report in, sent a team to find him. They found his weapon on the floor. They found his blood on the walls. They did not find him. The crew began to whisper. Something was on the ship. Something was hunting them. Refused to believe it. Humans are weak, he told his crew. They could not board this ship without us knowing. Keep searching. But on the fourth day, found a message written on the wall of his personal quarters. It was written in the language, painted in the blood of his missing warrior. It said, "We see you." For the first time in his life, felt the strange feeling in his stomach grow stronger. This time he recognized it. It was fear. Sergeant Lee moved through the dark corridors of the ship like a shadow. He wore infrared goggles that let him see in the darkness. He carried a knife in one hand and a small pistol in the other. Behind him, his team of 5 soldiers followed in perfect silence. They had boarded the ship 3 days ago. using a small shuttle that they had modified to avoid detection. Since then, they had been living in the walls, crawling through maintenance tunnels, and slowly taking the ship apart from the inside. They disabled the lights. They made strange noises. They left messages in places where they would find them, and whenever a warrior was alone and his team were there. The humans were not fighting a battle. They were waging a war of terror. On the fifth day, Engineer finished her work. She had crawled through kilometers of alien machinery to reach the scout ship's engines. Now, with careful precision, she cut 3 specific cables. The ship shuddered and stopped. On the bridge stared at his screens in horror. His engines were dead. His weapons were offline. His ship was drifting helplessly in the nebula. And outside his window, the horizon appeared from the clouds like a predator emerging from the shadows. Captain's face appeared on the communication screen. His eyes were calm. His voice was steady. "Commander," he said, "you gave us a choice, surrender or be hunted." He paused, and when he spoke again, his words were cold as ice. "We chose neither. We chose to hunt you instead." Tried to respond, but before he could speak, the horizon's weapons fired. Not at the engines, not at the bridge, at the communication array. The last thing Commander received from the scout ship was a single image. Captain's face, calm and resolute, staring into the camera. Then there was silence. Died in the darkness of his own ship, killed by creatures he had dismissed as weak prey. His last thought was confusion. How had this happened? How had the hunted become the hunters? He never found the answer. Back on the Dark Claw, Commander stared at the empty screen where the scout ship's signal had been. Around him, his officers shifted nervously. For the first time in his long life, felt a chill run down his spine. These humans were not ordinary prey. They were something else entirely. News of the destroyed scout ship spread quickly through the Empire. At first, the commanders refused to believe it. A single human ship, crewed by soft creatures with no claws and no armor, had killed an entire hunting team. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. Commander sent 3 more hunting parties to find the humans and prove that the scout ship's destruction was just bad luck. Each party was larger than the last. Each was commanded by experienced hunters with hundreds of kills. All 3 parties vanished. No distress signals, no final messages, just silence as if the ships had never existed. On the great throne room of the Supreme Predator filled with noise. Dozens of commanders argued and shouted, their 4 arms waving in anger and confusion. Nothing like this had happened in 10,000 years. The Empire had never lost 4 ships to a single enemy. Supreme Predator sat on his throne and listened to the chaos with ancient, cold eyes. He was the oldest living, over 300 years old. His chitin armor had turned dark gray with age, but his claws were still sharp, and his mind was still sharper. He had ruled the Empire for 2 centuries, and under his leadership, they had conquered more worlds than ever before. When he raised one of his 4 hands, the room went silent instantly. "Tell me about these humans," said. His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. A young officer stepped forward with a tablet. "Supreme Predator, we have gathered all available information. The humans come from a planet called Earth. It is a death world with extreme conditions that should have killed any intelligent species. The humans themselves appear physically weak, with no natural weapons or defenses." "And yet they have killed 4 of our hunting parties," interrupted. "How?" The officer looked uncomfortable. "We do not fully understand, Supreme Predator. Our best analysis suggests that they use tactics we have never seen before. They hide. They set traps. They attack from shadows and disappear before we can respond. They do not fight like warriors. They fight like—" He stopped, searching for the right word. "Like prey," finished for him. "They fight like prey that has learned to bite." The officer nodded nervously. Was silent for a long moment. Around him, his commanders waited anxiously. Finally, the supreme predator stood, and his full height made even the largest in the room seem small. "These humans are interesting," he said. "Perhaps the most interesting prey we have encountered in a very long time. Commander, you will take the entire 7th Fleet to there, find them, study them, and then destroy them completely. Leave nothing behind." Bowed his head. "It will be done, Supreme Predator." As the commanders left the throne room, remained standing, staring at the stars through the great window. Somewhere out there, a species of soft, weak creatures was doing something no prey had ever done before. They were fighting back. And they were winning. Far across the galaxy, the horizon emerged from hyperspace above Earth. Captain looked at the blue planet through the bridge window and felt tears form in his eyes. They had made it home. After everything they had been through, they had survived. But there was no time for celebration. They carried knowledge that would change humanity forever, and that knowledge needed to be shared immediately. Within hours stood before the United Earth Coalition, a council of leaders from every nation on the planet. He told them everything: the Empire, the conquered species, the scout ships they had destroyed, and the fleet that was certainly coming to seek revenge. The reaction was fear, panic, disbelief. "You're telling us that alien predators are coming to destroy Earth," one leader demanded, "and we're supposed to believe this?" Doctor stepped forward and activated his tablet. Images appeared on the council's screens, images of warriors, their ships, their weapons. Then came the recordings of the battles in the nebula, the screams of dying, and the cold efficiency of the human soldiers who had hunted them. The room went silent. "Believe whatever you want," said, "but they are coming. We have maybe 6 months before their fleet arrives. We can use that time to fight over whether this is real, or we can use it to prepare. The choice is yours." The coalition chose to prepare. For the next 6 months, Earth transformed. Every factory started building warships. Every scientist worked on new weapons. Every soldier trained for a war unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Leading the military preparation was Major Moon, a young strategist who had spent his career studying unconventional warfare. While other officers wanted to build defensive lines and meet thee in direct battle, had a different idea. "We can't beat them in a straight fight," he told the high command. "They have more ships, better weapons, and thousands of years of combat experience. If we try to fight them the way they expect, we will lose." "Then what do you suggest?" an admiral asked. Smiled. "We don't give them a fight they expect. We give them a nightmare." His plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. Human forces would not form defensive lines. They would scatter across the solar system, hiding in asteroids, moons, and debris fields. When they came, they would find no army to crush, no fleet to destroy. Instead, they would find an endless series of traps, ambushes, and attacks from every direction. "We become ghosts," explained. "We hit them and disappear. We make them afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to breathe. We don't have to destroy their fleet. We just have to make them bleed so much that they decide we're not worth the trouble." The plan was approved. Human ships spread across the solar system, hiding and preparing. Mines were placed in orbit. Weapons were hidden on asteroids. The entire solar system became a trap waiting to be sprung. Meanwhile, Doctor worked on understanding them themselves. He studied every piece of data they had collected, every recording, every captured transmission. And slowly, he began to understand the enemy's greatest weakness. "They're not just predators," he told one evening. "They're pure apex predators. They've never been hunted. They've never been afraid. Their entire psychology is built on the assumption that they're the strongest thing in any room." "And what happens when they're not?" asked. "They break," replied. "Their minds can't handle it. Fear is literally foreign to them. If we can make them feel it, really feel it, they won't know how to respond. Their instincts will fail them." This information was shared with every human commander. The goal was not just to kill, but to terrify them. Every battle would be designed to maximize fear and confusion. While Earth prepared for war, something else was happening across the galaxy. News of the human victories had spread beyond the Empire. On conquered worlds, enslaved species heard whispers of creatures who had fought back against the and won. On a planet called Harmony 7, a young alien named listened to these whispers with growing hope. Her species, had been conquered by the 100 years ago. Since then, they had served as slaves, building ships and weapons for their masters. But now, for the first time, allowed herself to imagine something different. If the humans could fight maybe others could too. She began to talk to her fellow quietly, carefully. She spoke of resistance, of freedom, of a galaxy without masters. At first, only a few listened, then more and more. Similar conversations happened on dozens of other conquered worlds. The idea of rebellion, long considered impossible, suddenly seemed real. The humans had shown that they could be beaten. And if they could be beaten once, they could be beaten again. Back on the Supreme Predator felt something strange in the air. Reports came in of unrest on conquered worlds. Production was down in several sectors. There were rumors of secret meetings among the slave species. Recognized the signs. He had seen rebellions before, small flickers of hope that he had always crushed quickly and completely. But this time felt different. This time, the flickers were spreading faster than he could stomp them out. And at the center of it, all were the humans. Perhaps I underestimated them, said to himself as he stared out at the stars. They are not just prey fighting for survival. They are a spark that could set the entire galaxy on fire. He sent new orders to Commander. The mission was no longer just to destroy Earth. It was to exterminate humanity completely, to erase them so thoroughly that no one would ever remember they existed. The humans had to die, not because they were a military threat, but because they were something far more dangerous. They were hope. And hope knew was the most dangerous weapon of all. As fleet prepared to depart, the galaxy held its breath. On Earth, humans worked day and night, building, training, preparing. On conquered worlds, slaves whispered and planned. In the dark spaces between stars, ancient powers watched with growing interest. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. And everything would depend on a species that the universe had dismissed as weak, fragile, and insignificant. Everything would depend on humanity. Commander's fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system on a cold morning in February. 200 warships emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. Each ship was massive, covered in weapons, and crewed by the deadliest predators in the galaxy. Stood on the bridge of the Dark Claw and looked at the small blue planet in the distance. Earth, home of the humans who had killed his scouts and embarrassed the Empire. Today, he would turn that planet into ash and dust. Scan the system, he ordered. Find their fleet. His sensors reached out across the solar system, searching for human ships. What they found confused him. Commander, his officer reported, we detect only minimal defenses around Earth. A few orbital platforms, perhaps 30 small ships, nothing else. Frowned, this made no sense. The humans had 6 months to prepare. Where was their fleet? Where were their defenses? They are hiding, he decided. They know they cannot face us directly, so they hope to survive by avoiding us. Cowards. He waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. All ships advance toward Earth. Destroy anything that moves. The fleet pushed forward into the solar system, past the outer planets, past the asteroid belt. The journey was quiet. Too quiet. Instincts, sharpened by centuries of hunting, told him something was wrong, but his pride refused to listen. They were passing the orbit of Jupiter when the first trap was triggered. A small asteroid suddenly exploded, and from inside it came a wave of missiles. The weapons streaked toward the nearest ships, targeting their engines and communication arrays. 5 ships were hit before anyone could react. "Return fire," roared. But by the time his ships turned their weapons toward the asteroid, there was nothing left to hit. The human attackers had already vanished into the debris field of Jupiter's moons. Over the next 6 hours, it happened again and again. Attacks came from asteroids, from moons, from the rings of Saturn. Small human ships appeared, fired, and disappeared before they could respond. Mines detonated against hulls. Electronic warfare scrambled communications. The fleet, designed for direct combat against enemy fleets, found itself fighting shadows. "Where are they coming from?" demanded, his 4 arms gripping the sides of his command chair. "Everywhere, Commander. They are everywhere and nowhere. We cannot track them. We cannot predict them. They do not fight like any enemy we have faced before." By the time the fleet reached the inner solar system, they had lost 30 ships, not to great battles but to 1,000 small cuts. His fleet was bleeding, and they had not even seen a real human warship yet. On Earth's moon, Major Moon monitored the battle from a hidden command center. Around him, dozens of officers coordinated the human attacks, directing small strike teams to hit the fleet and fade away. "Phase 1 is complete," announced. "They're confused and frustrated. Time for Phase 2. He sent a signal, and across the solar system, human forces began to move. The fleet was now passing Mars when the real battle began. From hiding places in the Martian dust, from caves on the planet's moons, from ships buried under rocks and debris, the human fleet emerged. 300 human warships surrounded them from every direction. They were smaller than the vessels, but they were fast and agile, and they did not fight like the expected. Instead of forming battle lines, the human ships attacked in small groups, diving in like wolves, striking vulnerable points and retreating before they could bring their heavy weapons to bear. They targeted engines first, leaving ships drifting helplessly. They targeted communication arrays, isolating ships from each other. They targeted fuel reserves, turning warships into floating tombs. Commander watched in disbelief as his fleet fell apart around him. This was not war as they understood it. This was chaos. This was madness. "All ships form defensive positions," he ordered. "Protect each other." But the humans seemed to know what he would do before he did it. Every time the ships tried to group together, human attackers would appear from unexpected angles, breaking up their formations. Every time a ship tried to chase a human attacker, it would fly straight into a trap. On the bridge of the horizon, Captain commanded the Central Assault Force. Lieutenant flew beside him in a strike fighter, leading a squadron of the fastest pilots in the human fleet. "Target their flagship," ordered. "Cut off the head and the body will fall." Squadron dove toward the Dark Claw, dodging fire from a dozen ships. They were faster than anything they had ever seen, moving through space like dancers, always one step ahead of the enemy's weapons. Engineer worked at her station on the horizon, coordinating the electronic warfare that was crippling communications. She had spent months studying their systems, and now she turned that knowledge into a weapon. Ships received false orders. Their targeting systems locked onto empty space. Their shields flickered at exactly the wrong moments. "Their flagship's escorts are breaking formation," reported. "You have an opening." Saw it, a gap in the defensive line around the Dark Claw. She pushed her fighter to maximum speed and led her squadron through. On the Dark Claw, saw the human fighters approaching and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He recognized that feeling now. He had felt it when the scout ship went silent. He had felt it every day since then, growing stronger and stronger. Fear, pure animal fear. "All batteries fire on those fighters," he screamed. But it was too late. Squadron had already reached the escort ships. In a matter of minutes, they had destroyed the engines of 3 destroyers, leaving the Dark Claw exposed. Then the alarm started screaming. "Commander, boarding parties. multiple breaches in the lower hull. Spun toward the security screens. Human soldiers were inside his ship. They had used the chaos of the battle to launch boarding pods, punching through the dark claw's armor like insects burrowing into flesh. Sergeant Lee led the assault team. His soldiers moved through the dark corridors of the flagship with deadly purpose. They wore night vision equipment and carried weapons designed to pierce armor. They had trained for this moment for months. The security teams tried to stop them, but they were fighting in conditions they had never experienced. The humans had shut down the lights. They had sealed corridors, creating kill zones. They used the ship's own structure against its defenders. And his team moved like ghosts, appearing from nowhere, killing and vanishing again. The warriors, for all their strength and ferocity, could not fight what they could not see. On the bridge, received reports that made his blood run cold. His security teams were being slaughtered. The humans were moving toward the command deck. They were coming for him. "Evacuate the bridge," one of his officers urged. "Commander, we must get you to safety." But did not move. He stood at the center of his bridge, his 4 arms hanging at his sides, and watched as his empire crumbled around him. He thought about all the species they had conquered, all the civilizations they had destroyed, all the prey that had knelt before them in fear and submission. None of them had ever done this. None of them had ever fought back like this. "What are these creatures?" he whispered to himself. The door to the bridge exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Through the chaos saw a single human figure step through the doorway. It was a man, medium height, not particularly large or threatening looking. He held a rifle in his hands. For a moment the two locked eyes, the great commander and the human soldier, the predator and the prey. Raised his rifle and fired once. Fell. Outside, the battle was ending. Without their commander, without coordination, the fleet broke apart. Some ships fled into hyperspace. Others surrendered. Most were destroyed, picked apart by human that gave no mercy and asked for none. When the counting was done, 160 ships had been destroyed or captured. Only 40 escaped to carry news of the disaster back to the Empire. On Earth, people watched the sky and cheered. They had won. Against impossible odds, against the greatest predators in the galaxy, they had won. But Captain did not celebrate. He stood on the bridge of the horizon, looking at the wreckage of the fleet, and thought about what came next. "This was a victory," he said to his crew, "but it wasn't the end. They still have thousands of ships. They still rule most of the galaxy. They'll be back, and next time they'll know what they're facing." Stepped up beside him. "So what do we do?" Turned away from the window and faced his crew. His eyes were hard, but his voice was calm. "We don't wait for them to come back. We take the fight to them. We show the galaxy that they can be beaten. We give hope to every conquered species, every enslaved world. We become the spark that lights a fire they can never put out." He paused, and when he spoke again, his words carried the weight of destiny. "We're not running anymore. We're hunting, and we won't stop until the galaxy is free." The news of the Seventh Fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy like fire. On 100 conquered worlds, enslaved species heard the impossible story. The unbeatable predators had been defeated by a species no one had ever heard of. Soft creatures, weak creatures, humans. For the subject races of the Empire, the news was like the first ray of sunlight after 1,000 years of darkness. If the humans could fight back, maybe they could too. On Harmony 7, the young name stood before a gathering of her people in an abandoned mine. For weeks, she had been organizing in secret, whispering about rebellion, about freedom. Now, with news of the human victory, her whispers became shouts. "They did it," she told the crowd, her silver skin glowing with emotion. "The humans stood against thee and won. They proved that our masters can bleed. They proved that our masters can die. If they can do it, so can we." The cheered. Similar scenes happened on dozens of worlds. Rebellions that had been planned in secret suddenly exploded into the open. Factories that built weapons went silent. Supply ships disappeared. Garrison forces found themselves surrounded by populations that were no longer afraid. The empire, which had stood for 10,000 years, began to crack. On the Supreme Predator received report after report of uprisings, rebellions, and defeats. His 4 eyes narrowed as he read each one. The damage was spreading faster than he could respond. And at the center of everything were the humans. Called his remaining commanders together. The humans are not just a military threat, he told them. They are a disease, a plague that is infecting our entire empire with dangerous ideas. We cannot simply defeat them. We must erase them completely, utterly, forever. He ordered the Grand Armada to assemble. Every warship, every warrior, every weapon the Empire possessed would be gathered into one massive force. Over 2,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled by the. Their mission was simple: travel to Earth, destroy the human, and then burn every human colony, every human outpost, every place where a human might hide. The Grand Armada began its slow journey across the galaxy, a tide of death that would take months to arrive. But the humans did not wait. Major Moon presented his new strategy to the coalition. They're sending everything they have, he explained. That means their supply lines are stretched thin, their shipyards are undefended, their conquered worlds are weakened. We don't wait for them to come to us. We go to them. We cut their legs out from under them before they can reach Earth. The coalition agreed. Operation was approved. Human strike teams, transported by captured ships, spread across the galaxy. They hit targets they never expected to defend. Fuel depots were destroyed. Communication relays were sabotaged. Shipyards that had built warships for centuries were reduced to rubble. Leading one of these teams was Lieutenant Park. Her squadron, the Ghost Wolves, became famous for their daring attacks. They struck targets and vanished, leaving nothing but destruction behind. They began to fear her name. They told stories of a human woman who could fly through fire and disappear like smoke. While fought in space, other humans worked in the shadows. Song was not a soldier. She was a diplomat, a spy, and a master of words. For months, she had traveled secretly across the galaxy, meeting with leaders of conquered species, building trust and coordinating resistance efforts. Her network stretched across dozens of worlds, and through her, the scattered rebellions became a unified movement. On a space station in neutral territory, met with representatives from 6 different species. Though the stone-skinned, the aquatic, and others who had suffered under rule for generations. The humans offer you a partnership, told them. Not conquest, not domination, partnership. We fight together, we win together, and when they are defeated, we build a new galaxy together, one where no species lives in fear of another. The representatives looked at each other. This was unlike anything they had ever offered. They only knew how to take. These humans were offering to share. Why would you do this? One of them asked. What do you gain? Smiled, freedom, safety, a future where our children don't have to fight wars like this. We're not doing this just for ourselves. We're doing this because it's right. One by one, the representatives agreed. The Alliance of Free Peoples was born that day, a coalition that would grow to include dozens of species and hundreds of worlds. As the Grand Armada crawled toward Earth, it began to suffer. Human sabotage teams had poisoned food supplies. Crew members fell ill, unable to fight or even stand. Ships that separated from the fleet for repairs never returned. Officers who went asleep never woke up. Morale collapsed. For the first time in their history, warriors were afraid to close their eyes. Doctors studied reports from captured prisoners and made a fascinating discovery. The sustained campaign of fear was having a profound effect on psychology. Their minds, evolved over millions of years to be predators, simply could not process the experience of being prey. They're breaking down, reported to the coalition. Depression, paranoia. Some are becoming violent and attacking their own crew members. Others are becoming paralyzed, unable to make decisions. A few have even committed suicide. They literally don't know how to handle being afraid. This information was used to make the psychological warfare even more effective. Human teams left messages for the defined, recordings of human laughter echoing through the corridors of damaged ships, images of human soldiers watching from impossible distances. They began to see humans everywhere, even where there were none. By the time the Grand Armada reached human space, it had lost 300 ships to sabotage, disease, and desertion. Another 200 had simply disappeared, their crews driven mad by fear and flying off into unknown space. Commanding from his throne ship at the center of the fleet, watched his great armada crumble around him. He had never experienced anything like this. In 3 centuries of rule, he had never felt so helpless. But he was still supreme predator. He still had over 1,500 warships. He still had the strength to destroy Earth. "Increase speed," he ordered. "We end this now." The remnants of the Grand Armada pushed forward toward their final destination. Waiting for them was the combined might of humanity and its new allies. Captain stood on the bridge of the Horizon II, a warship built from the lessons of every battle they had fought. Around him, a fleet of 300 human ships and 200 allied vessels formed a defensive line in front of a barren moon. This was where the war would be decided. "They're coming," reported from her fighter. 1,500 ships. They look rough, but they're still a lot more than us. "Numbers don't win wars," replied. "Courage does, determination does, and we have something else they don't." "What's that?" Looked at the approaching fleet, his eyes hard with resolve. "We have everything to fight for. Our homes, our families, our future. The fight because they want to stay on top. We fight because we refuse to kneel. There's no force in the universe stronger than people fighting for their freedom." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain to all ships. They came to our home expecting to find easy prey. They found wolves. They sent a fleet expecting to find cowards. They found warriors. Now they've sent everything they have, hoping to finally crush us." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice rang with conviction. "They're about to learn that hope cannot be crushed, freedom cannot be conquered, and humanity will never ever surrender. All ships engage, let's finish this." The 2 fleets met in a storm of fire and light, and the final battle for the galaxy began.